So now we have the floors all installed, and I started installing quarter round. I measured for it using a laser tape versus a regular tape measure because it was a lot faster. I made sure to get all of the cuts measured in the room before I went out to the saw and started cutting. This laser tape saves all the measurements so you can just reference them. You never have to write them down, you never have to remember them. And it's super accurate within like a 32nd of an inch, which is great for trim. All of the cuts I make on the quarter round are inside miters. I don't do any butt cuts, and the reason is so that I could do a return cut where it would normally be a flat cut, and it makes it look a lot better. When I measure, I make sure to hook the very end of the inside miter. I like to put the saw blade down on the trim just to get a feel for where it's going to cut. And then I usually just do a slight dip cut. It might not be the right spot, but then I can kind of fine tune it from there and get a real feel for where it's at. I went ahead and cut all my pieces while I was outside so that I can bring them in all at once, and I like to dry fit the whole room before I nail everything. Just make sure everything fits really good so that I don't have to cut anything else. And then as you can see, I like to get the corners together and see how well they fit, and I push them down because the floor has a little bit of flex to it. It's always my goal with finished carpentry to make all the joints look as perfect as possible, even if it's going to be painted. This is a close-up shot of a return miter. One of the walls was longer than the actual pieces that I had. These are 12-foot pieces, and this wall was 13-foot. So I split the joint halfway down the wall, and I did a 45-degree angle as the joint rather than just a straight cut. When the pieces come together, it just looks seamless. You can hardly see the joint even without any caulking or spackling. And that's the goal always with finished carpentry, is a seamless joint. After everything was dry fit, I started nailing it, and with quarter round I just nailed diagonally. Nothing special, just a nail every 16 inches or so, and then right in the corners. When I did the crown molding in this room, I also did inside miters. There's a couple ways to do it. You could actually do cope cuts, or you can do inside miters. Doing crown with inside miters makes it harder for the corner joints to line up. So I just left the corners unnailed until I put the pieces together. Many carpenters will swear by only coping the inside corners. I really don't care. This is my own house. I think as long as the joint looks tight and you can put it up pretty quick, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, coping or mitering. And for me in this case, it was just quicker and easier just to miter the joints and then line them up as I nailed them. I used my laser tape to measure this crown. I find it to be just so much easier, more accurate, and less frustrating than trying to use a tape measure. The crown was nice and tight from wall to wall, so in order for it to fit, I actually had to bow it out in the middle and then put the corners in place. After making sure that the corner is nice and tight, I just nail up the middle of the crown, and that way it'll hold up while I nail up the rest of it. This room was nice and simple. It was just a big rectangle, so all I had to do was 4 pieces of crown, all with inside miters. Sometimes the ceilings are not completely flat, but you want to keep your crown molding flat. So this is the result. You'll have a gap between your drywall and the top of your crown, but this is paint grade, so I can just caulk that in later. I'm not too concerned about that gap. As long as my crown is straight, that's all I'm worried about. So the next step, I'm going to caulk and spackle in the quarter round and the crown molding all the way across the room to get ready for the painting process. As I look around at the crown, I'm really happy with the result. All the joints look good without any caulk on them, and that's always the goal. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video where we're going to caulk, spackle, and paint all the trim and the walls.